Hello, my name is Leandra Bernstein, and this is a LaRouche PAC News Update. On Friday, February 8th, Lyndon LaRouche issued a public call for a full congressional probe into the Obama administration's conduct of extrajudicial assassinations and full disclosure on the events and aftermath of the September 11th, 2012 attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi. LaRouche demanded that the Congress has a powerful responsibility under the U.S. Constitution to thoroughly probe the executive branch behavior, particularly when there are clear indications of unconstitutional actions. Congress was given powerful tools, including subpoena power and ultimately impeachment. It was noted at the outset of the February 7th Senate Intelligence Committee's confirmation hearing of John Brennan that the administration had been stonewalling, failing to produce information requested by the Senate to conduct their constitutionally mandated oversight. In the case of requests by Committee Chair Dianne Feinstein, Co-Chair Saxby Chambliss, Ron Wyden, and others, the administration failed to produce the government's legal analysis of when it is justified to use lethal, targeted force against a U.S. citizen for over 1 year. It was only the day before the hearing that a 16-page report produced for the Senate was leaked to the media. On the day of the hearing, members of the Senate Intelligence Committee were then given extremely limited access to further documents concerning the legal opinions of the White House, justifying its conduct of targeted killings of individuals. In the aftermath of the two February 7th hearings on Brennan's confirmation and the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing on the Benghazi attack, a number of senators are now threatening to put a hold on the nominations of Brennan to the CIA and Chuck Hagel to Secretary of Defense. This Sunday, Senator Lindsey Graham appeared on CBS's Face the Nation, saying he would ask his colleagues to block the nominations unless there is information produced on what President Obama actually did on the night of the Benghazi attacks to protect the embassy during an 8-hour-long siege. Graham said, "I don't know what the president did that evening. I don't know if he ever called anyone. I know he never talked to the Secretary of Defense. I know that he never talked to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and they never talked to anybody at the White House." Graham said the president was disengaged and vowed that he would not stop his questioning until he got to the bottom of the Benghazi attacks. Despite the growing demand for information, a critical leading question tying together both the assassination policy and the events in Benghazi was not raised. In the weeks leading up to these two hearings, LaRouche PAC representatives delivered a series of updated fact sheets and a sheet of questions to be posed to CIA Director nominee Brennan to every relevant member of the Senate. These hard questions are intended to initiate the investigation that would make Obama's ouster from office inevitable. The key question presented in that fact sheet is whether anything was done to protect the U.S. Embassy in Benghazi from retaliation following the June 4, 2012 targeted drone assassination of Abu Yahya al-Libi, a senior al-Qaeda official and member of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. Further, was it acknowledged that such retaliation could come from the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group leadership, which the president allied with to overthrow Gaddafi, even as Ayman al-Zawahiri called for revenge? Complete disclosure in response to that question alone will begin to unravel what the executive branch has been covering up by false talking points, deception, and diversion, and to what end those operations have been covered up. A thorough congressional investigation would undoubtedly open the door to uncovering what amounts to a series of secret wars carried out by forces accountable only to the President of the United States. On February 12th, the day John Brennan is scheduled to appear before a closed-door session of the Senate Intelligence Committee, a new book is slated for release entitled Benghazi, The Definitive Report. Written by Brandon Webb, a former Navy SEAL, and Jack Murphy, a former Green Beret, The book points to a war conducted inside Libya with such secrecy that not even Ambassador Chris Stevens was informed of it. Excerpts from the book indicate that at the time of the Benghazi attack, John Brennan ran a highly compartmentalized program out of the White House in regard to weapons transfers, and Stevens would not have been trusted with that type of information. It continues, Stevens likely helped consolidate as many weapons as possible after the war to safeguard them, at which point Brennan exported them overseas to start another conflict. Further excerpts suggest that a small circle within the executive was directly responsible for waging a secret war. Behind closed doors, President Obama had given his counterterrorism advisor, John Brennan, carte blanche to run operations in North Africa and the Middle East. In 2012, a secret war across North Africa was well underway. With JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, Brennan waged his own unilateral operations in North Africa outside of the traditional command structure. These direct action operations, unlike the traditional ISR missions, were off the books in the sense that they were not coordinated through the Pentagon or other governmental agencies, including the CIA. With Obama more than likely providing a rubber stamp, the chain of command went from Brennan to McRaven, who would then mobilize the men of ISA, SEAL Team 6, or Delta Force to conduct these missions. When the President and a small coterie take it upon themselves to wage undisclosed wars that ultimately lead to the death of valuable American citizens, is it not the case that that branch of government must have recourse to both the legislature and judiciary? When the President of the United States acts in the name of the people of the United States, without disclosing those actions to their scrutiny or oversight by their representatives in government, that President has shed his authority as Commander-in-Chief and assumed the authority of a dictator.
It's the idea of giving any president unfettered power to kill an American without checks and balances that's so troubling. Every American has the right to know when their government believes it's allowed to kill them.
We only take such actions as a last resort to save lives when there's no other alternative to taking an action that's going to mitigate that threat. None of those actions are to determine past guilt for those actions that they took. The decisions that are made are to take action so that we prevent a future action, so we protect American lives.
Since the release of the 16-page Department of Justice white paper, the administration, and John Brennan in particular, has been hiding behind a vaguely worded justification for the targeted killing of individuals abroad and potentially inside the United States. This justification includes the redefinition of what constitutes an imminent threat. Like the Bush administration before him, Obama has assumed the right to kill on the premise of a war without borders and potentially without limits. This has been done under the auspices of the September 14, 2001 Authorization for Use of Military Force, recently expanded under the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. It is this notion of a post-national world where wars can be fought within a nation's borders without the consent of governments, which is a signature of the Tony Blair doctrine. It is a doctrine that enables the overthrow of a nation's leadership under the assumption of a responsibility to protect, the doctrine adopted by the United Nations and employed by the United States in the invasion of Libya, which was never authorized by the U.S. Congress. It is a doctrine that engaged the United States, the United Kingdom, and the rest of the coalition of the willing in a nearly decade-long war in Iraq, which is currently still engulfed in civil war. It is a doctrine on which the overthrow of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is premised, an action that flies in the face of traditionally recognized international law under the 1945 UN Charter. To this end, It's revealing that the redefinition of imminence in the 16-page DOJ white paper was premised on an argument made in 2004 by Lord Goldsmith, then Attorney General to Tony Blair. Citing Blair's advisor, Lord Goldsmith, the white paper passage reads, "The condition that an operational leader present an imminent threat of violent attack against the United States does not require the United States to have clear evidence that a specific attack on U.S. persons and interests will take place in the immediate future." What has come to the surface since the Thursday, February 7th Senate hearings only begins to scratch the surface of what must be a complete investigation by a bipartisan grouping in the federal legislature to check the actions of the Obama White House. As Lyndon LaRouche stated in the wake of these hearings, we have reached a moment of truth, and I call upon all members of Congress to uphold their pledge to defend the Constitution. Only a thorough, open, and competent congressional inquiry into the Obama assassination policy and the Benghazi tragedy can get at the truth that the American people so richly deserve.